All right, today we got a 2010 Honda Fit. Guy bought it used, got a good deal, only paid $3 something for it. Been a great car for him. So we're gonna talk about how this works out for him. And this, by the way, is the Honda Fit Sport. But you might be fooled there. You know, that's one thing. It's a small engine. The Sport version is no different than the regular version in terms of engine, transmission. It's more style than anything else. 1 inch bigger wheel and nice alloy rims instead of those cheap little steel ones with hubcaps, so you give them that. And the interior is a little bit fancier too. It does look a lot better than the stock one, but since they got the same engine and tranny, you can see he's just driving this thing around and he's getting 33.4 just driving it around. And it got the fancy Honda media center too. One of the things I like about this particular one is it is made in Japan. Now, truth be told, Honda's got an excellent factory in Ohio. I, though, personally always like Japanese cars made in Japan. Now, a lot of them, the engines, the trannies come from Japan. They put them together someplace else, but they are more conservative. They have closer tolerances. I would rather get a Japanese car made in Japan. That's just the way that it goes, and this particular one was made in Japan. Now, the owner of this car is going to medical school. So, of course, he doesn't have any money. As he says, he's paying them money to work for them because he's in his 4th year. This is a great car. It's cost them practically nothing to drive this thing around. Fits, and in other places they call them Jazz. It's the same car, just name. It depends on who owns what name, where. In France, the name Solera is owned by a French company. So Toyota could never sell Toyota Soleras, so there they call them Toyota Camrys. But here they can call them Soleras because there are no French companies that have the patent for it in the United States. But here we call them Fits, and they're actually, for what they are, a very good car. Front-wheel drive, so you put snow tires on in winter, even around here, you're not going to get stuck in the snow. They're light enough that, hey, they get good gas mileage, but they still got a reasonable amount of space. I mean, check it out. Look, here's the back seat. Look at all this room. If you watched that video I made a few weeks ago on that Honda that the guy bought for 55 grand, when he put that seat back, there was 1 finger length between the back seat and the front. And that is supposedly a sports sedan. These are really well designed in terms of spatial integrity. There's a lot of room for a very small car. Of course, when you open the hatch and you drop the seats, you got even more room. They're really well-designed vehicles for what they are. Now, in other countries, as the Jazz, they're even more popular because gas is much more expensive in other countries. These get good gas mileage. Really, as a 1.5 liter 4-cylinder engine, it's got plenty enough horsepower to go. Now, you'll notice this is a Massachusetts car, so you can see anything that's made out of metal, especially aluminum, is going to be pitted. But the thing is, it still works. See, looking inside, it's still clean. Check it out. Look at that frame. Now, he's obviously taken care of it and cleaned it, but there's not 1 iota of rust under there. Realize the Japanese figured out how to make cars that didn't rust a long time ago. My 94 Celica still isn't rusted. They use zinc-rich primers. They know what they're doing when they're building cars so they don't rot away. Let's say this was a Chrysler or a Ford of the same year. I guarantee you the bottom would be all rotting away. The AC still works on it. Most of the parts, alternator, are still original parts on it. I hate these small batteries on this. I wish they put bigger ones in. That's the only thing. They'll wear out prematurely just because they're so small, and there isn't much space to put a bigger one in, but I mean, it's kind of a small thing to talk about, really. Sure, the headlights are a little faded, but you can polish those out. It's not that big of a deal. Now, you know, this guy's at 4th year medical school. You're going to be a doctor. He says he wants to be an anesthesiologist. He likes this car, and he said his next car will probably be a RAV4. He wants to be a bit higher, but he's still not getting extravagant. He's looking at logical machines that can last a long time, get decent gas mileage, and get you where you're going, and don't turn into rust buckets, because you live up on the East Coast here. You don't want to buy a rust bucket Chevy or a rust bucket Chrysler. They'll fall apart. These things are coated better. It's a better deal. Now, when you buy them, you can't believe anybody used, so you got to look at it. Who knows where it started out? I mean, a guy come over here yesterday. The car started out in Alaska, then it went to Minnesota, then it went to Arizona, then it came here. So somebody could say, oh, it's an Arizona car. Well, not really. It didn't spend that much time in Arizona. It spent more time up north where they use a lot of salt on the road. So let's take it for a spin. Now, he added the backup camera, and he also added the in-dash thing, too. Now, the tire pressure monitoring light's on. It's because the tires that have bad batteries. Who cares? You can check them with gauges yourself. Tiny car. Look, we put it in gear. It's not shaking at all, and hey, it's got some mileage on it. It's got 125,000 miles on it. And for such a tiny car on such a bumpy road, really, it doesn't ride that bad. And I got this giant hump up here, and it's tall enough that you don't hear it scraping either. Now we'll take it on the real bumpy road here, and we'll feel it more, but let's see what it does. Actually, it rides better than my Toyota Matrix does. Of course, it's 3 years newer too, but Hondas do have a tendency of riding and driving better than Toyotas. They have better suspension systems. Now we'll wait for an opening here. Nobody to the left, nobody to the right. Let's see how it takes off. Hey, it's a Honda. It's got some zip to it. Pretty good shifting transmission too. A little car, but man, it's zippy. Being a Honda, it does handle quite well. You can go curving around in this thing. You want to zip around the curves, you can zip around the curves all you want. They handle, they don't oversteer. They're really fun to drive little cars. And of course, being small and lightweight, hey, the brakes work like a charm when you got to put the brakes on. Look at this. They stop fast. It's a little light car. It can stop really fast. Basically, they're pretty much perfectly designed for a vehicle of this size. It's like its name says. They are very fit. And it's the sports version. Yes, it has bigger wheels, but I mean, everything else is the same. It's not like a Civic Si or a Civic Type R that really have radical improvements over the run-of-the-mill Civics. This is still the Honda Fit. It just has different accoutrements. Still runs the same, gets great gas mileage, has the same space inside. Being a sport model, it's got cool, tricked out blue lights and stuff that you see on them. It looks a little snazzier. Here we have a Honda Fit 2010. It's exactly what it says. It's Fit. A great little car. You only paid 3-something grand for it. Gets good gas mileage. Doesn't have to put any money into it. And really, you might be surprised. If you're ever thinking about getting one of these, road test one. And you'll probably fall in love with it, because for that kind of money, a little engine in a small car like that, it's zippy and it handles like a dream. Really, for that kind of money, it was an excellent car. And that's why they still make them. There's absolutely nothing wrong with these cars. They don't have any real downsides. Now, some people say, well, they don't ride great. They ride great for a car that size, you know? I mean, there's only so much you can do with a small car. Get in one of these, then get in a Honda Civic Type R that'll cost you 65, 70 grand. This thing rides 10 times better than that, because it's not a race car. Type R handles like a dream, rides like a piece of iron going down the road. Most people can't stand them. Only the racers want them. This, for a little car, definitely worth the money. The indestructible small Toyota Tacoma, before they got big, this is a 96. The guy paid $2,200 for it like 80,000 miles ago. Is he getting his money worth? Well, I certainly think he is. Go back in time. It happened to be, yes, believe it or not, a granny's car. He bought it from a granny with his friend. I guess the new one they're going to call Stout, and it's going to be a small pickup truck, because all these people, they think they know their own business. Let me tell you something. A lot of them, they don't know squat about the American public. Americans loved these small pickup trucks, but they wanted to make bigger ones for bigger profit, right? Ford, making their little Mavericks, they're selling the heck out of those things. And they're a smaller pickup truck. It'll be interesting to see if Toyota Stout will be the classic rear-wheel drive, or whether they'll go to front-wheel drive like the Maverick did. Those Mavericks really ride quite well for a little pickup truck. When these things were made, yeah, they ride rough. They're a little pickup truck. But the modern ones can be made so they ride well. And they all made a mistake, if you ask me, not making small ones. You can fit a lot of stuff in this. Gets a lot better gas mileage than a big giant truck. Since these were Toyotas, they generally lasted forever. Because when you look under the hood, the venerable 2.4 liter Toyota 4-cylinder engine. These things, I've seen them with 1,000,000 miles on them. They are so well made. This particular one doesn't burn oil. Yeah, the AC still works. Just made to go and go. Now, when you check it out, the original Toyota bed, hey, still in pretty good shape. The youngins out there, these are called split bench seats. You probably have no idea what they are, but they are bench seats. People put them to use back in the days, because look how wide they are. And as we close the door, these are called hand crank windows. For those of you who don't know, that's how we used to open windows. They never broke. You cranked them up and down by hand. Now, I notice it's still got the Toyota Logic Control tape deck. This was before even CDs. It's got a tape deck in it. Basic vehicle, no sunroof. Glass in the back. The fancy ones, like the one my son had a sliding back, but this is just a plain old back. But you start it up. It's a Toyota. They always start. This key is so worn, you can pull it out. Leave the car running. Now, they weren't made that way. It just wore out that way. Now, listen to this rattling pile of junk. Well, don't blame the vehicle. He's just throwing a bunch of junk back here. It's all rattling away. There's nothing wrong with the vehicle. Now, I do have to say, they said they had storage behind the seat, but it's not that roomy. And yeah, the plain old tires don't have hubcaps anymore, and the rims are rusty, but they still work. This was radical. It had 16 valves. Well, radical from dinosaur ages. Originally, cars only had 2 valves per cylinder, so it would have 8. This has 16 because there's 4 valves per cylinder. Mass airflow sensor change is still on, so we're going to do a scan just to see what's going on. But since this is a 1996, in Connecticut, when you're 25 years old, you don't have to go through the emissions testing. So he can merrily drive his Toyota around. It runs perfectly fine and not care about it. Gee, you gotta wait 25 years in Connecticut and Tennessee. It's instant. They don't do any kind of inspection. That's an old vehicle, so we use an old scan tool. I spilled some paint on it the other day, but you can still read it, so. And the code is PO171. System is 2 lean on bank 1. Generally, if you get a small intake manifold leak, maybe a little leaky EGR valve, or even a clogged fuel filter, or dirty fuel injectors, you can often get that code. It's the only code it has, so let's look at live data. You can see the short-term fuel is 0%. So short-term it's not running lean. But long-term, it's heady quite a bit. Now it's got no problems at highway speed, so it can't be the fuel pump not pumping enough pressure because it runs perfectly fine. It's getting around 29 miles a gallon on the highway. Hey, it's a truck. That's really good gas mileage considering how old it is. It's got the old-fashioned emergency brake that you pull instead of having it over here. It's the old American style from old cars. We'll look at some more of the data, see if anything looks weird. Timing's good, air temperature's right. Now here's a warning I'll give you about old cars like this. It does say it's running 30% lean on the long term, even though the short term is normal. It's getting 29 miles a gallon and it's running fine. My advice is, leave it alone. Because I've actually fixed vehicles like this. I could get the long-term fuel trim to be maybe 1 or 2% instead of 30. You know what happened? The gas mileage went down. Because if it runs lean, you're losing less fuel and more air. You get a lot of little rattling noises of bearings and stuff going around. But I don't hear any vacuum leaks, and I know it can't be a vacuum leak now. And here's my reasoning. If you got a vacuum leak on a car, it does the most damage when it's idling. Because if it's stuck in air, you get too much air, not enough fuel, it'll idle like crap. This thing idles perfectly fine. If you do have a vacuum leak, when you're going at lower speeds, it affects the vehicle more because the engine's only going 800-900 RPM. When a vehicle's going fast on a highway, worse fuel trims, if you've got a different problem, like the injectors are dirty or they're old or something like that, because a vacuum leak is generally going to make it worse in the long term and not the short term idling around. Something in the fuel injection system is just acting up a tiny bit. And as old as this thing is, with 29 miles a gallon, who really cares? You don't really care. You don't worry about that kind of vacillation on an old truck like this. He uses it every day, doesn't burn oil, runs perfectly fine, runs pretty good the way it is. Getting 29 miles a gallon, you want to lose a few of those, so it's running a little bit richer? Not me, I'd leave the thing alone. We're going to take it for a road test now. So the handbrake off, we'll ignore the check engine light. We know what it is. And of course, there's no backup camera. You use your head for a backup camera. These old things rattled, but what the heck? Whee! You can fly over those bumps. And the brake light comes on because the switch here is kind of stuck, but we don't care about that either. It still goes down the road. Rattles and all. The silver back into the mirror starting to go away on the edges. All the old Toyotas did that. But the flap's still working. A lot of times they're broken, but this is still working. Let's turn the radio up if you don't like the rattling noise. It's almost lunchtime, so there'll be 8 million people here. Doesn't idle all that bad. The rattling more or less goes away until you hit bumps. And here we go. We'll floor it. engine. Smooth shift, still got plenty of zip in it. It's a very reliable 2.4 liter engine. Realize, it's not that small of an engine. It's a reasonable size. And can we turn fast? Yes, we can. Look at that. Hey, let go of the wheel, it's centered right. These are fun little trucks. I think Toyota's gonna make a smart move if they start making small trucks again. There are so many people that want small trucks. I mean, these things you can basically run forever. In Afghanistan, my son saw tons of them when he was there. So really nothing unexpected. The engine still got pulling power, still shifts like a dream. And you know, he's basically done not much of anything other than change the oil, put tires on when they wore out, and put gasoline in the tank. And when we're driving back, I don't hear any humming from worn wheel bearings or anything. They're all still in excellent shape. They overbuilt these little bitty pickup trucks. Back in the day, I mean, that's why they sold so many of them. They just lasted so long. So these old Tacomas, they may have been small, but man, they're pretty much bulletproof vehicles. Here's an 04 Camry. Guy's had it for years. Bought it used, loves it. Just changed oil and filter, brake pads, usual stuff. But now the check engine light's on, so on goes the scan tool. We'll go inside. Hooks up like any scan tool. It's no different. It's just gigantic. Diagnostics. This car's pretty old, but let's see if the auto VIN works. It may or may not. We might have to put it in automatically because it is pretty old. Wait, and you can see he upgraded this lot. Now she put a Pioneer head unit in. Cloth seats that last forever. If you remember my grandson's Camry, it was an 07. And guess what? The leather seats are all totally eaten up. We had to put seat covers on it. This doesn't need seat covers. And it's loading the program. No, it was made in Kentucky because we looked at the side. It's not a partial zero emissions. And you see they're always slower on these old ones, but we'll do the fault scan. I don't want to attach any photos, no. We shall go to the ECM. It's got two codes. PO136. Oxygen sensor circuit fault. Bank 1, sensor 2. Okay, that's the sensor. That's by the catalytic converter. Do active testing. So start it up. See what's coming out of that oxygen sensor. And you can see bank 1 sensor 1's working perfectly fine, but the oxygen sensor on bank 2 is totally dead. It's doing nothing. So we know it is totally dead. Now, the test that we're doing, as you can see, switches the injector volume. So you can see absolutely nothing's happening there. You can see it's happening on the other one. So either the wire is bad or that sensor shot. Next test, you can see bank 1 sensor 1 working perfectly fine as we rev it up, but you can see the bank 1 sensor 2 is completely dead. So let's look under there. See if any of the wire or anything looks bad. Now there it is. I don't see anything wrong with the wiring. And as we look inside the pin here, we just connected it. You can see they're crystal clear. It's not like they're corroded or anything. And it turns out they have the same pins, the same clips, so it will work. Everything's exactly the same. You get a big old wrench like this. Luckily, this thing, as you can see, is in an easy place. Some of them are hidden in their stickers. We got that on. We get the old sledgehammer out. Look at that. Went right through the New Jersey rust. You don't see that very often. Sometimes it can take days of hammering. Well, we got lucky on this one. This already came with lube on it, so that's no problem. Just screw it back in, put it on. You want to get it nice and tight. You don't want any air leaking. You get an air leak, it'll mess it all up. Of course, you got to click it back together. You heard that click? It's in there nice and tight now. While we're on here, we'll take a look at this. Hey, superficial rust, still solid as a rock. And that's not surprising because, as the owner just informed me, this was always a northern car and it's in Jersey now. But you got to understand one thing. Even back in 2004, Toyota knew how to rust-proof it. They used zinc-based primer, and the whole assembly, before the car's put together with no engine or anything, goes into this bath and it's electrostatically charged, so the zinc gets not just on the outside of the frame, but on the inside where all the holes are, so it will not rust. This is proof right here. It's been in Jersey all those years, and it's still solid as a rock. The AC works, and you can tell that's the original AC compressor. There's a Toyota alternator. It's old as can be. The engine doesn't burn oil. See, that was 2007 and up for a few years. This is a 2004. It doesn't burn oil. These engines can last basically forever, as can the transmissions. None of this 8-speed or CVT nonsense. These transmissions, it's a simple 4-speed automatic. And not great gas mileage, but still decent gas mileage for an old car that still runs good. You know, is it really worth spending 40 to 50 grand for another car to get what? 8 miles a gallon better? It doesn't really make any sense. To give you an example, we got 33 miles a gallon driving from Jersey to here on the highway. What is there to complain about that? We'll erase the code. Now we'll go back. That's erased. Relatively low to the ground, so we're gonna have to go sideways over the big hump here. And over we go. So it won't drag. No, it's an old car, but these things can run forever. And if you ever own one, you'll notice this: when you step on the brake, they're a little bit spongy down to the ground. That's how these things age. Like a fine wine. If you got an old Camry, your brake pedal will probably go relatively low. If it sinks and then it starts moving, you got a problem. But they just automatically resort to lower brake pedals as they age. You can replace all kinds of parts and it'll still do it. So as long as it stops good, it's nothing to worry about. And here we go to the road. We'll give it a little road test. Not a race car, but not particularly slow either. And yes, it's lunchtime. So everybody's going to eat lunch. The endless stream of cars and trucks. It looks like there's an opening coming. There it is. Here we go. We'll step on the gas and hey, it started to peel out there. Oh, the engine's still strong. 147,000 miles, doesn't burn oil. Check it out. Smooth idle. Windows still work. Everything works. It even has little trees. Hey, still shifts good, runs good, corners fine. These old Camrys could last forever. Even in New Jersey. So there you have it, an oldie but a goodie. All it needed was an oxygen sensor. Easy to figure those things out when you got a good scan tool. It'll show you what data's coming in, what data's going out. But for its age, it doesn't burn oil. It still shifts like a dream. It runs fine. And yeah, it's dated looking, but hey, it's a classic now, right? And he paid $3,800 for it years and years ago, and it's still going strong. And it's not rusted out in Jersey. What more could you ask for? So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.